Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Today we are going to be talking about something so exciting, something that I've been wanting to talk about for a long time, which is budgeting and how I use budgeting, specifically the Budget Mom's budget by paycheck method, to pay off $10,000 in debt. So let's get right into it. Just for a little bit of backstory, I'm going to talk about how I got into it because I feel like it's kind of important to tell you guys how I was spending before, to see if it kind of relates to you, if that's kind of how you were spending, and to see that it's possible for anybody. Before I started budgeting, I had no plan in place. I was basically getting paid, making sure that my money was put aside for bills, the rest free for all. There was no plan, nothing was being allocated, nothing was being budgeted. It was just kind of like one big lump sum of money that I had available to spend until the next week that I got paid again, right? I guess you would say that's living paycheck to paycheck, but that's what I was doing, right? The only thing I was saving for was my Bronco, and that was it. It was just bills, Bronco, money for whatever I wanted, right? With that, I had no idea really like how much I was spending on food, how much I was spending on myself to splurge. Like I didn't really have a concept of how much I was spending on gas, like no budget amounts, I guess you could say. And to top it off, I was using credit cards like crazy. The idea was that the payments were small, so I was like 26 bucks here, 40 bucks here, like it's not a big deal, you know what I mean? But when your whole month is just literally credit card payments, your money is going, and it's kind of annoying because you kind of feel like you're chained to debt. You know what I mean? So my dear friend Andrea, I will always credit Andrea, because if it wasn't for her mentioning the Budget Mom, I would have never clicked on the video. So the rest is history. Andrea introduced me to the Budget Mom. At the time that she told me about it, I didn't really pay much attention to it, but I watched a video on how her budgeting method works and it just clicked. So let's go ahead and start with the process. So the Budget Mom's method is basically getting your paycheck, whether it's monthly, bi-weekly, or weekly, and basically allocating every single dollar. Like what she says is every single dollar has a purpose. So the order in which she kind of like allocates her money is bills, and then once you have enough for your bills, you have your money for your spending categories, which is what you spend on a weekly basis: food, gas. If you buy coffee every day, that's in your weekly spending. And then you move on to sinking funds. You fund your sinking funds. And once all those three things are taken care of, if you have debt, you pay your debt. If not, you kind of choose whatever you want to do with the rest of that, right? So once I learned that method and I saw one of her videos, like it just made so much sense to me that immediately I was like, okay, hold on, let me try this out. So I literally printed my statements. This was in February of 2019. So I printed my statements and I categorized everything that I had spent in the last month or so. And that kind of gave me a ballpark of how much I was currently spending. So when you want to do your budget, you want to make sure that it's realistic. So let's say you're spending weekly $100 on yourself and you want to start this budget. You can keep it at 100, or if you want to get a little tight with it, you can, maybe push it down to 80 or 70, but I would never recommend going too low of a budget, for example, like from 100 to 20, because it's just not realistic. That's not how you are, and you're gonna feel like it's too restricting, and that's not the point of budgeting. The point of budgeting is to kind of see how you've been spending before, create some guidelines, stay within the budget so that you can reach your goals. So I'm gonna show you guys literally the first drafts, I like to say, of when I first started budgeting. Here's my statements of all of the stuff that I was buying. As you can see, I literally wrote down like if it was debt, if it was utilities, food, subscriptions, if it was my income, my insurance, food, gas, personal. And with doing this allowed me to see how much I was already spending, like not throwing out random numbers. You kind of have to see how you're already living, see, how you're gonna make it work. So with that, I came up with my variable expenses, also known as spending categories, or, just your categories for your cash envelopes. Here, I figured if I spent $250 a month, back then, by the way, these numbers are from 2-3 years ago, and I was getting my lunch paid a lot, so I didn't really have to worry about food or groceries. This was a very good time. So here's my food. I budgeted some money for fun, for beauty, and for miscellaneous, and for gas. So these don't have to be the categories that you start with, but that's what I started with. You kind of have to come up with the categories that work for you, for things that you notice that you spend on constantly, to make sure that you can still buy the things you want, but they're within budget. Another thing that I created that was really important for me to see was basically all of my bills. This is old, guys, by the way. These are my like actual old documents that I was using when I was first started budgeting in February of 2019. We're literally in February right now. I've been doing this for 4 years now, and I paid off the 10,000 I think within a year, or like a year and a half. I'll show you guys one of my budgets. Okay, so here's the debt, you guys. So I just want to show you guys, like, this is like me. Like, I actually went through this. I didn't finish doing this because I created a spreadsheet, so I didn't really come back to this page. So I had a few credit cards: Barclays, Cara Credit, Target, Bank of America, Capital One, IKEA, Ally, Loan, and PayPal, which was a total of $10,793. All I'm gonna say is I was an impulsive spender. If I saw something and I couldn't afford it, I'd put it on PayPal. If I saw something at Target and I wanted to buy it, I would just buy it with my credit card. Like, to me, I felt like I want it now, so I'm gonna get it. You know what I mean? Like, I didn't really have goals. Like I said, I was just getting my money and spending it. I didn't see the future, what I needed money for in the future. So like, it didn't really click until I saw a Budget Mom video, and I was like, dude, I can pay off my debt and freaking save for my sinking funds. So it was just amazing to me. I think what made me the most excited about this process was saving, which is kind of weird, but the fact that I can like set up these little goals to save for, that really made me excited to like stick to it. And obviously also paying off my debt. Like, I wanted to be debt free, you know what I mean? But the sinking funds kind of just like made it fun for me. So really quick, I want to explain what a sinking fund is, because you might, maybe I kept saying it, but I didn't explain what it was. I don't know why it's called sinking fund. I don't know why it's sinking, but essentially it's a goal that you're saving for that is being split up into bite-sized pieces so you can save it paycheck to paycheck. So for example, the first sinking fund that I thought of and that comes to mind and that the Budget Mom talks about is Christmas. Christmas is a big expense that usually makes us want to spend with our credit cards. So it's a good sinking fund to start with so that you can start funding it in the beginning of the year ideally, but if you can't, that's fine. So if you have a goal, which is the sinking fund, your sinking fund goal, you're going to split it up with how many times you're going to fund it. Maybe that's kind of confusing. But let's say, for example, you start in January, right? And you want to have this sinking fund funded by November so that you can start shopping in November. Ideally, you're going to break it up into 11 months, right? So let's say, for example, your sinking fund goal is $1,000. You're going to break it up into 11 months. So we're going to divide it by 11. That means that every single month you need to save $90. So if you get paid monthly, you would do 90, but if you get paid bi-weekly, and you'll be saving $45 a paycheck, and if you're getting paid weekly, you'll be saving around $22 a week. So that's how a sinking fund works. You create a goal in mind, and you divide it by how many months and weeks and basically pay periods you have until you reach that goal, so that every single time you get paid, you can allocate some money to it. That way, when that expense comes around, you already have the money and you don't have to worry about how you're going to pay it. That's basically what a sinking fund is. More like a savings goal. I don't know why they're called like that in the budgeting world, but that's what they're called. Here are the first sinking funds that I ever wrote. I wanted a 2022 Ford Bronco. I wanted to save for Christmas, and I wanted to save for my Corolla tags and maintenance. So my tags was kind of a big one too, because every year when July came around, I was just like hit with this big chunk of money that I needed to pay. And the way I was spending before and like how much I was getting paid, that just didn't work with my budget. Like, I felt like one paycheck completely had to go to that. I don't know why I did it that way, but this here is what made me like so excited. I was like, dang, so you're telling me that if I break it down into months and like bite-sized pieces into weekly payments, like I can save to have enough money to spend in Christmas, to pay my tags up front, like without a hassle, without taking from my current money, and to save up for my Bronco, which I now have thanks to budgeting. Okay, so I'm gonna walk you guys through my first ever mock budget. So this is kind of how it works, right? You have a check, you take out your bills for that check, pay period, whatever. Then you allocate yourself some money for your spending categories, cash envelopes. Then you fund your sinking funds, which is basically like your savings goals. Then you pay towards your first credit card or as many credit cards that you want to pay that you have left over for, and then the rest you can save. Basically, this should zero out, right? The way I did it was a little weird sometimes because if I had leftover money here, I would just kind of keep that in my cushion, but you can allocate a specific amount for your cushion beforehand. So basically you would put it here, you would put like, you want to have 50 bucks budget cushion. That way, once your bills are paid and, you know, the institutions take your money from the bills, you take out your cash for the envelopes, and then you take out your cash for your sinking funds, you're not left with zeros. You have 50 bucks as your cushion. And then you can start growing your cushion so that you always have an amount in your bank account that is not allocated to anything. It's just there as a cushion. If your cushion grows beyond what you thought, you can take that amount and you can do whatever you want with it. You could spend it, you could save it, you could pay off debt. But in case you have to go somewhere that they only use credit cards, then that's kind of what your cushion comes in for. Or if you're paying a bill that you thought was $100, but it was actually $120, and you have your cushion there to kind of cover that. So that's kind of the purpose of the cushion. So as you can see, after I paid my bills, after I had enough to survive for the week, I like to call it, after you fund your sinking funds, that's when you start paying your debt. Every single week when I had money left over, I was putting it towards my debt little by little along with my monthly payments. So let's say, for example, here I have 2 bills that are actually credit card payments. Obviously, we have our minimum payments here, but we still have a larger payment here. And little by little, every single week since I was being paid on a weekly basis, I was allocating any extra money towards my debt. And so it might sound like, how was I able to pay all that money? Well, I also made money from selling cash envelopes on Etsy. So that also played a big part in me paying off the debt faster. I do think that I still would have paid it off had I not started the business, but it definitely accelerated the process for me. And I feel like having sinking funds and having a clear picture of what you want to have money for in the future is so important, and for me, honestly, so motivational to keep going. So for example, one of like the biggest goal that I had to save for was the Broncos. So that motivated me so much to just make sure I stayed within my means. If I allocated a certain amount of money towards my budget, that's all I would spend, not more. I would have to wait to get paid until the next week. If you wanted to buy something so bad and you didn't have enough for it, I feel like the week or the bi-weekly, like I feel like the time that you take from one paycheck to the next paycheck really makes you think like, do I really want that? It's like, yes, no. If you're not thinking about it the next week anymore, then you probably don't even want it. This is what I have on my Etsy page. It's a budgeting starter kit, which has these trackers that help you kind of get into a place where you can start budgeting. And if you are already budgeting, kind of just to organize your thoughts, your information, right? So right here we have spending categories, which are your cash envelopes. We have your monthly bills, your annual bills. If you have any like annual insurance instead of doing monthly, sometimes you get discounts for doing it that way. So that would be a good idea. Your budget categories. This is what I meant by saying you can put beauty here, means skincare as well as hair products as well as hygiene products, like all that stuff. This is kind of where you're going to describe what each of your budget category means. This is where you're going to put your sinking funds. Here's where you're going to put your debt. And then here is the layout that I created. This is different because after you do your income, bills, spending categories, and sinking funds, I put extra here because sometimes you don't, like what if you don't have debt, for example? You want to allocate some extra money to your sinking funds after you've done for all of them, you put it here. Or let's say you've done your bills, spending categories, sinking funds, and this is going to go towards something miscellaneous that you don't really categorize as saving or debt. So that's why I left it like that, extra. And this PDF can be downloaded onto GoodNotes, or you can print it. And then after you work out your budget, you have the cash breakdown so that you can go and pull your cash from the bank. The last part of the process, I guess you would say, I have a cash breakdown slip, which you take to the bank, and they will give you the cash you need to stuff your envelopes. I feel like if you're struggling with your budget, and if you're struggling living paycheck to paycheck, and if you feel like you're not saving, this is amazing to do. I would recommend it to everybody. I remember when I first started, I was like, you guys need to start budgeting. I was trying to get my best friend on it, my sister on it, like everybody I knew on it, because I feel like it was so revolutionary, because I wasn't doing it, but I know now that people are budgeting, but everybody does it like to their own way, you know what I mean? And so this method spoke to me. I've heard about the Dave Ramsey method, but it just doesn't speak to me the way this one did, and this is what works for me, so that's kind of what I've stuck with. With that being said, the link is down below for my Etsy, so you guys can check out my cash envelopes. You guys could check out the budgeting starter kit so that you guys can get started if you haven't already. If you have, then I have my cash envelopes for you to use for your budgeting if you're a cash spender. I now have mini cash envelopes, the regular size cash envelopes with option for hole punch for A6 binders. I also now have A7. I have some printables on there, and then I also have the budgeting starter kit, which will help you start if you haven't already, which has the information and tips in the budgeting starter kit for you to get started. I want to leave off on a positive note, which is if you feel like you're buried in debt, if you feel like you're chained to the debt, making monthly payments, barely chipping away at your debt, I just want to say you can do it. I did it. If I did it, anybody can do it. You just really have to be serious about it. If you need extra income, if you need to do a side hustle, if that's what it takes for you to hit your goals and have enough to save and have enough to pay your bills, got this. You guys are amazing. I hope this video helped you guys out a little bit. If you guys have not heard about budgeting and this is your first time hearing about budgeting, I hope this video changes your life. So I hope you found this video helpful. If you guys have any questions at all, please let me know in the comments below. I will be more than happy to help you guys and give you guys some more tips. As always, thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.